Greetings to you all from wherever you are joining this forum from around the world, and greetings as well to your excellencies, ministers, heads of UN bodies and business leaders who are part of this distinguished panel and distinguished speakers. And what a wonderful World Investment Forum we have had. And this is the last day. And so I welcome you all to this Ministerial and Business Executive Roundtable. We'll be focusing on the least developed countries, also known as the LDCs, and taking a look at the role of foreign direct investment in economic recovery, taking a look at other strategies that are specifically focused on SDGs within this panel. And so you're going to hear from our distinguished speakers who are decision makers and policy makers in their own right. And I will be introducing you to them in just a moment. Now, of course, as we know, more and more countries are continuing to get access to vaccines around the world. And so now countries are moving beyond surviving the pandemic and starting to imagine what their economies would look like post-pandemic recovery. And that is why this session is particularly important to discuss the role of FDI in economic recovery. Thank you and welcome to you all. And this conversation, like we said, is very important. And just a reminder to all of you who are joining us that this conversation is available in all 6 official UN languages. And you can find that button at the bottom of your screen. It's under the main screen. There are different rooms, and you can go in there to get the translation that suits you. My name is Yvonne Okwara, and I'm your moderator. Very honored and looking forward to the conversations that we are set to have here on what can only be a great culmination of some wonderful deliberations we have had here at this 7th World Investment Forum. So let me now invite our host, the Secretary General of UNCTAD, Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, to open this session. Ms. Greenspan.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. Excellencies, ministers and policymakers, heads of UN organizations, distinguished panelists from all sectors of society, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to welcome you all today to the LDC Ministerial and Business Executive Roundtable on the closing day of UNCTAD's World Investment Forum. I would like to thank Ms. Courtney Rattray, High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States for co-organizing this roundtable. Thank you, Courtney, for being with us and for being such a great partner. The theme could not be more urgent: the role of investment in contributing to the recovery of LDCs. Let me share with you some of UNCTAD's data and thought leadership on this subject. As has been highlighted many times during the forum, we are in the midst of a very uneven and divergent recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Advanced countries are growing and vaccinating at rates that are multiples of those in LDCs, who have to date only vaccinated less than 4% of their population. Part of the divergence of the recovery is related to investment. Advanced countries are investing like never before to recover from the crisis. This is on top the very large fiscal packages we saw last year. In general, developing countries represent less than 10% of all recovery spending, with LDCs being an even smaller fraction of it. On average, advanced countries have spent more than 30% of GDP on counter-cyclical packages, while LDCs have only been able to spend about 1.8%. And though global FDI is now growing back after a 35% fall last year, this recovery is bypassing most developing countries, excluding China. In LDCs, foreign direct investment is in fact still falling, according to our latest data. The big question, therefore, is how to reverse this trend. And for this, we need to understand why this is happening. According to our research, even before the pandemic, LDCs were facing important challenges to attract international investment flows. This is due to a number of reasons, including commodity and tourism dependence, climate change-related debt crisis, as well as a general lack of shovel-ready, viable, and bankable projects in many countries. We at UNCTAD have been working on solving these issues for a long time. Our mandate to continue supporting LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDs was renewed recently at UNCTAD 15, our first conference in a small island developing state, Barbados. Part of our renewed call is to galvanize new allies in supporting investment in LDCs. During the pandemic, we have seen the importance of governments and the private sector working together. Governments, through proactive investment facilitation, including by investment promotion agencies, helped unblock supply chain bottlenecks and facilitated the reconversion of existing businesses towards fighting the pandemic. We must not forget these lessons. We at UNCTAD believe that we have a window of opportunity now to attract new, transformative investment towards LDCs. We calculate total long-term investment firepower to be around $10 trillion, though most of this capital is being spent in advanced countries. This figure is so large that it will still produce spillovers effects that will change international investment flows. To make use of this opportunity, we need to work together with the private sector and double down in capacity building and technical cooperation. But we need to go beyond even that. It is important we reverse current international investment flows, but it is also important to envision an efficient, sustainable, and productive way to spend investment capital in LDCs. Both issues are in fact related. We need tangible plans for tangible investments. Our least developed countries report for this year coincided with the 50th anniversary of the UNCTAD-led creation of the least developed countries category. In it, we propose a pivotal agenda focused on building productive capacities for LDCs programs of action. And our World Investment Report this year specifically looked at priorities for investment promotion through the lens of building productive capacities in LDCs. Following up on these efforts, I would like to take this opportunity to announce that we are launching a multi-agency capacity development program for investment promotion agencies of LDCs. This is really a very good initiative in which I hope we will count with all the stakeholders' support. The program aims to improve the institutional capacity of LDCs to attract investment in SDG-related sectors, with a strong emphasis on post-pandemic recovery and sustainability. Together with UNCTAD, the program will be jointly implemented, of course, with our co-host today, UNOHLLS, and also by ILO, ITC, UNIDO, and the World Association of Investment Promotion Agencies, WIPA. Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to hearing your perspectives on how to strengthen the investment climate of LDCs and the role of government actors, such as the investment promotion agencies, as well as the private sector, in channeling investment for a sustainable recovery. Your inputs and suggestions will guide UNCTAD's future work. A report of this meeting will feed into the preparatory work of LDC 5 that will take place in Doha, Qatar, in January 2022. So the deliberations today are very important for us. And with that, I thank you for your attention and participation today, because that will enrich the conclusions of this forum, but also allow us to influence what comes next for the LDCs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Greenspan, for setting the stage for us and helping us understand where we are. And indeed, you are absolutely correct. We have a window of opportunity, and this is the moment to seize that. And hopefully the conversations that we have had throughout the forum and that we're going to have today in this distinguished round table will go a long way towards identifying those windows of opportunity and seizing them for sustainable development of LDCs. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary General. And so now, as the Madam Secretary General had alluded to at the beginning, I'd like to now introduce or give the floor to Mr. Courtney Rattray, who's the High Representative of the Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Countries, and Small Island Development States, who has co-organized this roundtable today. Welcome, sir.
My esteemed colleague, Rebecca Greenspan, Secretary General of UNCTAD, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, colleagues, friends, all protocols observed. It's a real pleasure for me to join you today, and I thank UNCTAD for organizing this roundtable as part of the 7th World Investment Forum. You know, it's nearly 2 years since the COVID-19 virus first appeared on the global news. And the situation in the least developed countries continues to be difficult. As we know, supply chains have been disrupted. Trade and tourism have fallen off a cliff and remittances slowed down. FDI, foreign direct investment flows, have plummeted. As LDCs try to build a sustainable recovery, they continue to do so without the ability to swiftly deploy resources. FDI can be one important resource for economic recovery, but the picture is mixed, and they are starting from an admittedly weak base. Although aggregate FDI flows remained practically unchanged last year, these continue to be focused on a few large LDCs. They also continue to be natural resource oriented. LDC's aspiration to direct more FDI towards economic diversification and technological upgrading, job creation, and improved managerial skills remains largely unfulfilled. The perception of higher political risk and an unfavorable investment climate continues to hamper progress, and yet investment potentials in LDCs are huge, and the business case for investing in these countries is quite clear. From the supply side, LDCs are a natural resource treasure house. They have vast arable land for agriculture, large rainforests that play a crucial role in combating global warming, biodiversity, abundant renewable energy resources, enormous reserves of fresh water and precious marine and coastal resources. So equitably harnessed and properly managed, these resources can yield high returns on investments for the benefit of the LDCs and the global economy. Let's look from the demand side. LDC working age population will increase by 16 million people each year. By 2050, 1 in 4 youths worldwide will live in an LDC. These are young, vibrant countries with the potential to drive global growth in the coming decades. So we need stronger measures to promote investment. Despite the challenges of the pandemic, LDCs have undertaken important steps to facilitate investment, accelerating approval procedures, increasing online tools, and even reducing fees. Governments in Benin, Bhutan, Lesotho, and Mali have used e-registration systems with the support of UNCTAD to provide essential support to businesses. Investment promotion strategies need to be adopted to to support new sustainable development opportunities. And this should include attracting investments in green and digital industries while offering de-risking instruments where these are needed. Let me give you an example of Rwanda and Ethiopia, which have both started to adapt their investment promotion strategies, targeting investment and business activities in support of the SDGs. In Rwanda's case, it offers investment incentives via preferential tax rates to investors in the generation, transmission, and distribution of solar, geothermal, hydro, biomass, methane, and wind energy. In terms of Ethiopia, it has created an eco-industrial park designed for the textile and apparel industry, which is powered mostly by hydroelectricity. In addition, a stronger focus on aftercare programs, investment aftercare programs, to develop more powerful ties to existing investors can be a successful strategy. Investment promotion agencies will need to build the capacity and specialized knowledge that is required to promote this new value proposition. So a lot is possible with the right support and framework, but governments simply cannot do it alone. The private sector plays a very important role in implementing partnerships and working towards long-term solutions in support of these countries, the LDCs. With less than a decade left to achieve the Agenda 2030 goals, action and international cooperation must step up. An important opportunity to add fresh urgency to this agenda lies on the horizon. As you know, we are at the height of the preparatory process towards the 5th UN Conference on Least Developed Countries, which will take place in only 3 months' time in January of 2022 in Doha, Qatar. The LDC 5 conference will have a dedicated private sector forum from Doha. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to participate in the LDC 5 conference in Doha and in the private sector forum. We need your ideas and your expertise to make this decade truly a decade of action. Pandemic or no pandemic, we cannot afford to leave the LDCs behind if we are serious about achieving the SDGs, if we are serious about our ambitions for a better, fairer world. So in closing, let me once again thank UNCTAD as our partner for contributing to this effort and for organizing today's event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and thank you to both yourself and Ms. Greenspan for organizing this roundtable here today. And so I would like to now begin to hear from our distinguished panel. We've got ministers who are here to speak to us about the situation in their countries and their thoughts on moving forward and attracting the right investment, as we've talked about sustainable development, leaving no one behind, and what recovery, economic recovery looks like. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Tipu Munshi, who's Member of Parliament, Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Commerce of Bangladesh. Your Excellency.
Dear moderator, distinguished panelists, excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from Bangladesh. Let me begin by thanking Her Excellency Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of UNCTAD, for organizing and inviting me in this important session of the 7th World Investment Forum. Distinguished audience, in Bangladesh, under the visionary and dynamic leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, we envision to transform Bangladesh into an inclusive, resilient and knowledge-based country. By 2041, the year we plan to become a developed country. Now let me highlight some specific initiatives taken by Bangladesh. Efforts to improve the capacity of the government agencies and private sectors to promote and facilitate investment. While promoting FDI in Bangladesh, Government of Bangladesh has initiated major reforms in the service delivery end. Many of the services of the related agencies have started extending online services. Nearly 51 agencies have been brought under one-stop service. The company registration of his name, register of joint stock companies and farms, and the office of the Chief Controller of Imports and Export has been brought under automation. The National Board of Revenue is establishing national single window for faster custom clearance. Bangladesh government is also establishing 100 economic zone in Bangladesh to facilitate FDI. SDG focused a strategic for investment promotion and facilitation. Government has taken definitive measures to attain the targets of the SDGs. As the private sector is a major source to implement the SDG targets, hence government is giving highest emphasis to ensure their due participation. This includes promoting non-conventional sector, branding Bangladesh globally through generic and outreach approach, and engaging in focused dialogue with the interested organizations. Bangladesh also focused on a wide range of economic activities, from the more conventional fisheries, agriculture sectors to blue and green economy for achieving some of the SDC goals like no poverty, decent work and economic growth, life below water etc. Initiatives to diversify investment in Bangladesh, including targeting of investment for SDG related projects. In the post-COVID and post-LDC era, product diversification would be a crucial choice for Bangladesh to sustain the growth momentum. Hence, policy measures are undertaken to facilitate investment in the sectors such as goods product produced of man-made fiber, artificial leather, investment based on fourth IR technology, light engineering and some other promising sector like agro-product industry, automobile, etc. The government has provided $15 billion, which is 6.35% of GDP as incentive to RMG sector. As a result, the RMG sector, the single largest export sector of Bangladesh, is coming back. The incentive has also helped ensuring social safety net program, excellences, economic recovery including access to timely, affordable and efficacious vaccine and therapeutics against the virus have become the key priority of the time. The LDC report 2021 continues to emphasize the necessity of mainstreaming productivity capacities development in the LDCs for boosting their capacity to respond to and recover from crisis. Therefore, the event today has rightly highlighted the role of FDI in economic recovery in the LDCs and potential source of development finance for the LDCs. I believe that all the governments in the LDCs are striving their best to build back better and build forward better in line with the objective to achieve a truly inclusive and sustainable global economic recovery. However, providing support to institutions that promote investment towards LDC is more important than ever. Currently, many LDCs are on graduation track. Graduation from the LDC category is a step ahead and recognition of the socio-economic development efforts. However, the inherited structural vulnerability and lack of productive capacities cannot be solved overnight. Therefore, it is essential to consider that LDC specific support measures, SNDTS and exemption must be continued for a few more years after the graduation to ensure the smooth transition and graduation with momentum. Esteemed colleagues, we believe that FDI will play a complementary role to our recovery plans. We need sustainable FDI. I expect that international organizations and our development partners will come forward to support us with the policy and actions towards the facilitation of sustainable FDI flows to the LDCs. I thank all of your kind attention and I wish every success of this event.
Your Excellency Munshi, thank you very much for talking to us about the efforts that are being made in Bangladesh, notably digitalization of government services, amongst others, and of course speaking to what we would like to see going forward in the future. Thank you very much for that. Let's now focus on another country, and at this moment, hear from the minister attached to the Prime Minister, who's the Secretary General of the Council of the Development of Cambodia. Your Excellency, Mr. Sok Chenda Sophia. Your Excellency, Sophia.
Yes, good afternoon from Phnom Penh, Cambodia, Southeast Asia. First of all, a very good afternoon, and to Mrs. Rebecca Greenspan. It's the first time that I have the pleasure to see you. I understand that you are joining the UNCTAD board. Today, you bring to LDC's country a very good news. You just announced that you will launch a program, capacity building for investment promotion agencies for LDCs. This is excellent news. I believe that all my colleagues from LDC's IPA's country are delighted with the news. I wish during these few minutes to share the Cambodian experience with you. Tomorrow, 23rd of October 2021, Cambodia will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Paris Peace Agreement. I mention this because back then, in October 1993, Cambodia was just reaching the end of 3 decades of war or troubled time. And then we have to rebuild the country from scratch. We definitely need fund, and we are grateful to the assistance of the international community and to bilateral cooperation and assistance. However, although that assistance was generous, it was not enough, and we have decided back in 93, back in 94, because the first investment was in 1994, we were opening our doors, our countries, to private initiative, both local and foreign. This is to point out the crucial role of FDI in an economy, especially when you have to recover. I was mentioning back in 93, 94, we were recovering from the war, but now today we are meeting to discuss the best way to recover from the impact of the COVID-19. We are lucky because in 2019, our agency, of which I am the Secretary General, the Council for the Development of Cambodia, we were preparing a new investment law because many things have changed during the past 10 years. The geopolitical landscape have changed. And then all of you know that in our region, there were some tension, and there were the trade tension between the US and China. So taking into account those important changes, we wish to propose a new investment law in order to respond to the new needs of the business community. We were about to finalize it, and COVID arrived. I can tell you today that Cambodia, as other countries in the world, has suffered from COVID. But Cambodia, as other countries, can draw lessons from COVID, and as slogan put it, we can get back better. In time of challenges, in time of crisis, policymakers can propose to the government to take measures, initiative that in normal time, in good time, the government would be somehow reluctant for this or that reason. But because of the crisis, and we have to recover, it's easier to make decisions because there are priorities. For example, today, this morning I attend the cabinet meeting, and the Ministry of Economy and Finance has submitted the budget for 2022. I think that it's a very good budget because although all the ministries would want more budget, more money, but the government has decided to give priorities to Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Labor and Vocational Training. The Ministry of Public Works would like to build road, the post telecommunication to have more connectivity, digital connectivity. But we believe that recovery starts with human resources, with people. On this, I think that we are completely along the line of the... Back to the new investment law. Last Friday, on 15 October 2021, His Majesty the King signed the new law. So since a week, we had the new law. And this new law, although prepared before COVID, but has been adjusted thanks to the lesson learned from COVID. And for example, in previous law, we didn't provide incentive to SMEs. In the new one, we realized how SMEs, how local industry play an important role. You understand, with disruption in the shipping, in the supply, one have to think what can we do within our border. Don't misunderstand me. I never think about protectionism. No, we still be a strong supporter of multilateralism. Incentive, when people look at investment law, immediately they look at incentive, fiscal incentive. And in our new law, we do care about sustainability, about well-being of workers. Previously, in the previous law, we have a list of sectors and activities that are encouraged, that are eligible for fiscal incentive. To the same list, we have added new sectors: green economy, environment preservation, biodiversity, green energy. This is something that I think, again, is along the principle, the goal of SDGs. For the people, new provision, we will provide incentive to companies who will spend money for the human resources development, for the skill training provide to the workforce. We will provide incentive to people who provide accommodation, transportation, canteen to their workers. This is something that before we were not reluctant, but we were having priorities. But now we are convinced that we have to think more about the people more about our environment. We all know the challenges that climate change is bringing. So it's our way to contribute to the mitigation of climate change. One important thing is that I think UNCTAD is very interested, and UNCTAD has pointed out this problem, and we agree. We are happy that FDI come to Cambodia, but I humbly recognize that during the past 10 years, there is little linkage between those FDI with the local industry. New law, new provision will enable those backward linkages. This is very important. And last point that I like to make is civil servants are what they are. IPAs should dare to push doors, to open doors, because we have to do more facilitation. Investment facilitation, you attend seminars and seminars, but after 10 years, it's always still an issue. If you ask investors in whatever country, especially in developing country, especially in LDCs, they will say the law is one thing, but an enabling business environment is what we need. So law, good law is one part, a key part, but we need more than that. We all have to understand the need of the private sector if we are to develop our economies, if we are to provide more job and better job to our people. I thank you for this opportunity for Cambodia to share its experience. And I'm looking forward to send people to, we will be in the first to apply for the training that will be organized by UNCTAD for IPAs. I thank you for your kind attention.
Your Excellency, Sophia, thank you very much for that. And just hearing how you are now shifting priorities and putting in place new legislation as lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, focusing on the SMEs and local industries, strengthening them, of course, to address the global supply chain disruption during COVID, but also at the same time, being multilateral in that approach. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now, greetings to everybody and all the citizens of Cambodia. Thank you very much for that. Let's now get to understand the experience of Haiti. And at this point, I'd like to introduce His Excellency, Mr. Michael Patrick Boisvert, who is the Minister of Economy and Finance from the Republic of Haiti. Bienvenue, Votre Excellence.
Merci. Bonjour.
Thank you. Good morning from Haiti. Madam Secretary General of UNCTAD, UN High Representative of the LDCs, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, heads of business, ladies and gentlemen, participants in your respective capacities. At a time when investment, promotion and mass job creation is the hot button topic when it comes to relaunching Haiti towards economic growth and development, here we are, all of us here at the 7th World Forum on Investment to discuss and share our experiences and above all discuss appropriate policy for the progress of our countries and the well-being of our populations. I'd like to congratulate UNCTAD for their efforts to enable our country countries to better participate in international trade, which are vectors of progress for our populations and for mutually beneficial relations between countries and nations. My statement will take stock of the current situation, current challenges in Haiti, and the policies and approaches that have been recommended with a view to a strong, lasting economic recovery, to foster development of trade and its economic integration at regional and global levels. Haiti has signed a number of preferential trade agreements, including with the US, and in the field of investment with Mexico, for example. We're also in discussions with other countries and partners to conclude other agreements, including with the European Union. Moreover, its geographic proximity to major markets, such as that of the United States. As a result of that, Haiti could become a choice destination for nearshoring. These preferential agreements have led to a strong mobilization of foreign investment. Between 2009 and 2019, Haiti recorded a major FDI to the tune of around $1.5 billion US, a number of strategic sectors for the country, such as telecommunications, hotels, textile, and logistical transport. Sadly, that investment has tailed off in the last 4 years as a result of the long socio-political crisis that has hit the country. This is a complex crisis. It's both social, political, economic, and humanitarian. It feeds off the institutional weakness and our high exposure to natural phenomena. This multidimensional crisis has gravely impacted local production, which had already been hit hard by the economy's poor competitivity, as well as the impact of the COVID pandemic. Haiti urgently needs to create conditions to relaunch reconstruction and swift transformation at a major scale to better participate in international trade. To do that, the country needs to create conducive conditions to attract the crucial foreign investment it needs to set the stage for a sturdy economy that's able to generate sustainable, inclusive, resilient growth. The country has the potential to do this, but we have to put the conditions in place. So for me, it's a chance to call for an awareness raising among the stakeholders of the crisis as to the vital need to restore political, economic stability and to improve internal security. That's the price that we're willing to pay to foster mass investment so that we can meet the needs of the productive sectors and build competitiveness of the economy and participate fully in regional trade. The government remains well aware of this imperative need, and action has been undertaken to that end. Now, in terms of the business climate, action has been carried out to allow us to register in the last few years progress when it comes to business creation, access to electricity and credit, and facilities for payment of taxes and levies. Our efforts will continue and will cover the establishment of a single window for investment and for trade facilitation through the adoption of a new customs code. Now, at a fiscal level, the General Tax Code has been crafted and will undergo consultations with national stakeholders in the months to come. Now, that code seeks to standardize fiscal procedures, but also to harmonize existing taxes, eliminating those that generate high transaction costs for taxpayers. At the same time, we're working to modernize the regulatory framework of public-private partnerships so as to allow the government to implement structured, cohesive action for greater effectiveness, a post-COVID economic recovery plan has been drawn up and adopted at the start of 2021 with clear goals to restore average 3% growth over the next 3 years, together with a slight drop in inflation. Also to promote the creation of at least 100,000 jobs over the next 3 years. It will be adjusted to take into account the needs for recovery of the regions of Grand Sud, which were impacted by the earthquake of the 14th of August. This plan was drawn up following a participative approach, including government actors, private operators and development partners. It takes into account the urgencies of the moment, the demands of development, as well as international commitments to reform. Financing needs have been estimated at around 3.5 billion US, coupled with the needs for investment to achieve reconstruction of the Grand Sud, which was devastated by the earthquake, and all this to the tune of some 1.87 billion US dollars. And the rigorous implementation of this plan remains crucial if we're going to relaunch the economy, break the vicious cycle of challenges that self-perpetuate and amplify. However, marshalling the funding needed, which are largely beyond the budgetary capacities of our country, remains a major challenge. Now, that's why increased efforts will be made to create conditions propitious to attracting private investment, particularly foreign investment, so as to free up more budgetary space to address the domestic sectors in fields such as education, health care, basic economic infrastructure services. As part of the recovery plan, the Haitian government sees the private sector as being the driving force of inclusive development in promising sectors such as the agro-industry, digitalization, renewable energy, textile, real estate, tourism, and logistics infrastructure. The government, therefore, commits to tackling the constraints that might limit private investment in target sectors. Our efforts seek to improve the overall competitiveness of our economy with particular emphasis on those sectors to make them more attractive. The country has untapped potentials, and if we all rally together, we can build together a new Haiti with a prosperous economy. To do that, what we need are foreign investors who are ready to inject capital into Haiti. My great hope is that by next year, we can achieve tangible results so as to pave the way towards increasing our GNI our foreign direct investment in future. Our goal is to foster high mobilization of foreign investment, which have contracted over the last 4 years due to the crisis that has impacted the country. I thank you.
Merci, Bob. Thank you very much for speaking on the reforms and actions in your country post-COVID. And of course, good to hear about the plans that you have, particularly after the earthquake that hit Haiti, a few months ago, actually. And here's to a new Haiti. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us. So from Haiti, let's cross continents and come and hear the experience from the Republic of Togo. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Her Excellency Ms. Rose Kaye-Mividor, who's the Minister of Investment Promotion from the Republic of Togo. Bienvenue, Madame.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary General, High Representative, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ladies and gentlemen from the private sector, it's a great honor for me. A great honor for Togo, for our country to be represented at this round table. So Thank you very much to UNCTAD for valuing everything that's being done in our country. So my statement's going to cover three areas: ways of improving the capacities of the LDCs to facilitate investment, trade promotion and facilitation approaches focused on the SDGs, and initiatives to develop investment in the LDCs, including investment in SDG-related projects. Now, the first aspect, the LDCs face development challenges such as poverty, unemployment, weak level of primary material transformation, the exports, competitiveness when it comes to goods and products and services, and there's also a lack of balance between the public programs which seek to foster innovation in the key sectors of the economy. However, our countries see an opportunities. We have a young population, dynamic population with great potential and with production capacities that can be optimized through promoting and attracting new sustainable technologies and facilitating investment between promising trade sectors. In reality, there's a lot of untapped potential in our country. Promoting and facilitating investment must lie at the heart of our development strategy, since this is a cross-cutting priority, capitalizing on competitive advantages of a country whose benefits will be the creation of jobs and companies, of wealth, industrialization, structural transformation of our economies. All these aspects are crucial. Promoting investment per se requires addressing the business climate. In the case of Togo, our government has established a certain number of projects, infrastructure projects, for a more attractive, dynamic climate, but also audacious reforms to improve that business climate. Those reforms focus on the key strategic role of the private sector, both nationally and internationally, and the need for the state to keep offering it the most conducive business climate framework. To do this, we have established a cell dedicated to the business climate under the auspices of the head of state. In 2019, that cell bolstered that reform momentum. Thanks to that entity, reform and action were clearly identified with follow-up and monitoring within the administration of its action. It's this involvement in terms of adoption of text and their implementation have allowed Togo to make great progress in improving the business climate. We've adopted far-reaching efficient measures such as reducing timelines for creation of businesses, for granting building permits. The wait times have been considerably reduced, improving the electricity system, and that's all helped improve the country's productivity. To promote and facilitate investment with a view to helping improve the business climate, Togo recently established in November 2020 a ministry for promoting investment and an investment promotion agency whose role is to act as the single window for investors. Therefore, it's important for us to facilitate investments in terms of investment in entering the country, to provide information to potential investors towards promising sectors, and to help them as best we can in setting up shop in our country. The idea being to capitalize on FDI to create wealth and jobs. So the LDCs must generally adopt a structured approach when it comes to promoting investment, identify assets and niches of competitiveness, acquire tools that can allow us to draw on promising production aspects, and also help investors and populations benefit. Now, to attract new companies or to have expansion of countries already present in the country who generate strong, lasting economic growth. We think this proactive approach and this ongoing interest in the business climate, which has allowed Togo to be ranked at the top when it comes for attracting FDI, in terms of compared to the size of its economy in the most recent investment index. Now, in terms of trade facilitation, focused around the SDGs now. The SDGs are excellent, serve as excellent guidelines for promoting investment, because any FDI strategy must focus on combating poverty, which lies at the heart of creating wealth, but also inclusive, equal distribution of wealth. Creating decent jobs is crucial. SDG 9 on industry, innovation and infrastructure, and SDG 10 for reducing inequality are all play a key role. SDG 12 on sustainable consumption and production, 13 for combating climate change are just as important as SDG 16 on peace and justice. Either way, among the 17 the 70 Gs, they are indissociable and interrelated. In Togo, these SDGs were integrated into the National Development Plan and in the government roadmap 2020-25 that was adopted just after the start of the sanitary crisis, and defined the guidelines of government action. The priority was that of resilient, sustainable, inclusive growth for the benefit of the population. Promoting social responsibility of companies, corporate social responsibility, addressing gender issues, sustainability of facilities, infrastructure, other areas that the Investment Promotion Ministry is addressing when it comes to choosing and attracting foreign investment by supporting businesses in setting up in the country. Now, taking into account the SDGs in promoting investment allows us overall to maximize the positive impact of investment for the population and to assure its sustainability through future generations. Finally, in addition to initiatives to attract FDI in the LDCs, now the audio quality has suddenly got very bad. This is not possible for. And areas that, based on comparative advantage, the country can build on. For our countries, what we need is to get away from the dependence of export of raw materials, of natural raw materials, and other countries of low added value, and shift towards a structured transformation and focus on promising value chains and created added value for our economy and for our population. And in Togo, it's also the choice that was made to foster diversification, blending industrialization, infrastructure, and transformation of our agricultural products by establishing the first industrial platform. So this platform is being set up close to the capital, which in its first stage, it covers 400 hectares. It attracts top industrial companies, offers logistical facilities, parking, stocking. It's a major hub that can act as a proper reception hub for any new investors in Togo. As part of this public-private partnership with a group from Singapore, the government was willing. Again, the audio is coming in and out. And other types of industry, including pharmaceutical industry and assembly. So the government roadmap 2025 defined a number of priority sectors around which seek to attract investment and aim at diversification, including digitalization, renewable energy, in line with the strategy for electrification, which aims for energy mix by 2025 and a rate of electrification of the population of over 100, reaching 100%. The water sector, sanitation, health, in line with the SDGs and improving living conditions, which is at the heart of government policy. So in that respect, Togo pursues its diversification process and by capitalizing on its comparative advantage, including its logistical performance and its strategic position, which has made it a regional logistic hubs and the fourth African port and the top in West Africa. So diversification, economic diversification will be the key to resilient economic, inclusive growth and social development in our country. I thank you and wish you every success at this roundtable. Thank you.
And thank you so much for outlining the investment promotion strategies in the Republic of Togo, and for also having a very strong focus on sustainable development goals throughout. And indeed, we're in the decade of action, the last 10 years towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. And it's really good to hear about the initiatives that are happening in the Republic of Togo. Thank you very much once again, Your Excellency, from the Republic of Togo. And now I would like us to then hear the experience from His Excellency, Mr. Domingos Lopez Antunes, who's the Vice Minister of Commerce and Industry from Timor-Leste. Your Excellency.
Hello, good evening. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. Hello, sir. We can hear you and see you loud and clear. Please carry on with your intervention today.
Thanks. Good evening from Timor-Leste. Her Excellency Ms. Rebecca Grispan, Secretary General of UNTAC. His Excellency Mr. Kalchanai Ratai, UN Under Secretary General and High Representative of UN OHRLLS. Excellency and distinguished participants, it is a great honor and pleasure for me to participate as one of the panelists in this LDC Ministerial and Business Executive Roundtable on the role of FDI in economic recovery. On this occasion, I would like to share with you all about Timor-Leste key priorities related to national and international investment policy making in the coming years, and the approach adopted specifically to accelerate investment in priority sector for sustainable recovery. Based on Timor-Leste Strategic Development Plan, Timor-Leste vision for 2030 is to become a modern and diversified economy where the commercial and smallholder agriculture will substitute the subsistence agriculture. The petroleum sector will provide an industrial base to the economy. Tourism, particularly ecotourism, will be a significant contribution to the national economy, while light industries will complement and diversify it. Agriculture, tourism, and petroleum will play important roles in the development of Timor-Leste's financial resources. The global pandemic COVID-19, coupled with recent flooding and landslides that hit Timor-Leste in April this year, have resulted in significant human and economic loss. The economic recovery in 2021 is being harmed by this accumulating health and humanitarian crisis. But the recent passage of the revised budget may mitigate the adverse effects. Timor-Leste GDP is expected to expand by 1.8%, bounced back from 6.8% contracted in 2020. The economy is likely to recover in the medium term, but the structural impediments will hinder faster economic growth. Private investment is also low, accounting for only for only approximately 4% of GDP. Gave Timor-Leste time to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and strengthen its healthcare infrastructure despite its limited resources and capacity. In order to coordinate the overall response, the government established two main mechanisms. The first one was to set up the COVID-19 emergency fund led by a ministerial committee and supported by a technical secretariat. The fund was established with $219.5 million from the petroleum fund and used to cover all COVID-19 related expenses. Second, the government established the Integrated Crisis Management Center supported by the World Health Organization to lead the health response. Excellencies and distinguished participants, the government of Timor-Leste put forward an economy recovery plan conceived in August 2020 that sets out short and medium-term strategies to combat COVID-19. The objectives of the economic recovery plan are to contain the crisis and sustain the economy, and to lay the foundations for Timor-Leste's economy to become more resilient to future shocks while changing the course of development to improve the economic well-being of the people. The short-term measures focus on crisis mitigation to maintain jobs that existed before the crisis and recover lost family income by supporting the citizens directly and protecting consumption levels. The medium-term measures are to implement in the 2-3 years from 2021 to 2023 and emphasize recovery and transformations to respond to the pandemic and focus on structural issues such as new productive and dignified jobs, consolidation of social programs and public investment in education, health, housing, social protections, and changes in the production structures and factors that contribute to economic growth. There are around 75 measures in the economic recovery plan, which may be categorized in 4 pillars of areas of support, such as strengthening health services, promoting food security and social protection, boosting employment and output, and providing fiscal and financial stimulus to support macroeconomic policies. The first and the second areas of support of our pillar have an indirect impact in accelerating investment in priority sectors. However, pillars 3 and 4 have a direct effect on supporting both national and foreign direct investment. The short-term measures consist of 4 main programs: the distribution of food baskets, recovery subsidy, contributory exemption, and a special support for informal workers. Additionally, the medium-term measures emphasize the sectors in agriculture and small agri-food industry, tourism, housing, education, health, social protection, institutional aspects, optical fiber installations, and renewables, sustainable and alternative energies. One example of the medium-term measures in agriculture sector is developing small agri-food industry to transform from the subsistence agriculture as highlighted by recent 2019 agriculture census that around 66% of Timor-Leste population engage in agriculture livelihood in subsistence manner. Another measure is on the tourism sector, including community-based tourism. And 3 have been several programs the current government initiated to revive this tourism engagement in the rural areas. Additionally, it is also necessary to prepare policy framework on renewable energy to be more resilient towards external shocks and climate change. Just recently, Timor-Leste National Authority of Electricity presented a study of possible establishment solar power energy in the country as part of continuous shifting from oil and gas dependency. Excellencies, furthermore, the government of Timor-Leste has taken substantial initiatives to improve business climate and operating conditions for foreign direct investors by reforming business registration and licenses law in order to simplify all procedures. Trade Invest Timor-Leste and international finance corporations will also revise the private investment law to add a few clauses regarding investment committee and some benefits to attribute to the private sectors. The establishment of industrial park in the country as means to offer ready-made basic infrastructure such as land clearance, water and sanitation, electricity, and route to both local investors and foreign direct investment, including one-stop services. The park is a complementary infrastructure to Timor-Leste Tibar Port, a 15-kilometer western part from the capital city, which will be able to accommodate up to 350,000 20-foot equivalent unit by 2040 that will be operating by next year and managed under modality of private-public partnership by French company Bolloré Group. The creation of social market economy zone, GIMS, as a laboratory model for development. In this enclave zone, there will be high-quality infrastructure, including internationally recognized airport, power plant, and other infrastructure as a foundation to boost economy, where be people as the center of the economic development and growth. This model of development put forward sustainable growth at its core through dynamizing productive sectors such as industry and tourism by attracting both local and foreign investors, upon which each family member shall have a shareholder within the investment. But COVID-19 and its variants remain a threat to inclusive national and foreign direct investment attraction. Therefore, through the Ministry of Health, the government of Timor-Leste works hard to make sure vaccination rollout is maximized. Political stability is the key to a sustained economic recovery. Finally, prioritizing the public aspect on the most crucial sector is also essential to avoid substantial socioeconomic adverse. We look forward to learning the result of this roundtable discussion on the role of FDI in economic recovery. I thank you for your attention.
Your Excellency, Minister from Timor-Leste, thank you very much for your intervention in that regard. And it's very good to hear about the 4 pillars that are guiding the 75 measures of your economic recovery plan, and we wish you all the best with that, sir. Thank you very much for making the time to give us your remarks and to tell us what is happening there. And distinguished ministers, your excellencies, thank you very much for your presentations. It's very good to hear what is happening in your respective countries. And as Ms. Greenspan had said at the start of this session, that this is going to take collaboration between various actors, state and non-state actors, international organizations, private sector, and IPAs. And so now that we've heard what the ministers have to say and some of the interventions that they're putting in place in their respective countries, let's get some perspective now from the private sector and some of the interventions that they are putting in place and where they see the role of FDIs in investments, and particularly in investments that are related to the sustainable development goals and towards achieving those and using those to build back better following the COVID-19 pandemic as we look ahead towards what the economies will look like in the short and medium term. It is now my distinguished pleasure to invite from the private sector, Ms. Madalitso Kazembe. She is the chairperson of the SADC Business Council. Madam Kazembe. Madam Kazembe, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Listening to the honorable presenters that have presented before me, honorable ministers of Haiti, Togo, Bangladesh, it shows that LDCs face almost the same challenges. Most of the countries face the same challenges. And the bottlenecks that we face are actually derailing us in terms of FDI flows into our countries. And the total share of FDI flows to LDCs remain very low and most often focused on resource extraction with less value addition happening locally. And so there is indeed a need to attract more quality FDI. In fact, the survey that was done by World Economic Forum, it's called the Global Competitive Survey. It shows that most of the challenges that indeed we face in LDCs are almost similar in nature, and it was indeed confirmed by the honorable ministers. And there's so much that government can do, and they already have an opportunity to address some of those challenges, because the biggest challenges that businesses are facing or private sector is facing FDI flows into our countries are mostly to do with a poor environment for doing business in our countries. And so if we had enablers such as energy, that is in energy, such utilities like electricity and supply, of course, and telecommunication, both cost and supply, good telecommunication network, good transport networks. These would create an environment that is suitable for doing business, even for the locals, but also for FDI to flow. So LDCs have an opportunity to encourage investment in the area of energy and in the area of telecommunication and in the area of transport. And while doing that, this would create now an environment for more FDI to flow into the country, for quality FDI to flow into into our countries. And more so, it would encourage the diversification of FDI that we are looking for. And this is very crucial for LDCs, because we really concentrate most of the times on a few resources or a few products that we believe create export benefits or are the growth status for our economies. For instance, in Malawi, we have relied so long on tobacco, and now with tobacco losing value everywhere, it means it's inhibiting the growth of our economy. So if we were to create an environment that is suitable for FDI to flow into our countries, it would be beneficial, not just for growth of the economy, but also encouraging exportation of products, and also encouraging employment in our countries, because this is one of the major challenges that most LDCs are facing. And so also having an environment that is suitable in this aspect of a suitable macroeconomic environment that would also encourage businesses or encourage FDI to flow into our countries is very crucial. That is in terms of maintaining a low inflation rates, interest rates, and what is the type of exchange rate policy that we have in our country? Is it overappreciated, or it is in the right track? So these are some of the things that as governments we need to look at. And also the way we allocate towards our development budget. It is key that we allocate more funds in the development budget vis-a-vis the recurrent budget, so that it addresses some of the key bottlenecks that are being faced by private sector, by businesses, and which at the same time would encourage FDI to flow into our countries. And we do know that the pandemic indeed has disrupted both local investment and FDI flows into our countries. But and this may, of course, be a challenge in terms of fiscal space that would allow investment in such sustainable development sectors during the recovery period. But then this is also the time, it provides a window of opportunity to examine our current approach to investment. What do we need to do in order to encourage investment during this critical period? And that is, we could look into simplified approval processes for investment. I think that has been mentioned by Honorable Minister of Togo, so I will not drill myself in that area. But also, what is our incentive structure in terms of taxation? Our taxation system, does it attract investment in our countries? And look at our debt management. Are we managing our debt well? If we are to borrowing is not bad as long as we are borrowing for investment. But if we continue borrowing for recurrent expenditure, this is where our problem is. And also looking at considering some key priority areas that we could encourage investment in. I think that is very crucial for LDCs. Let me stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Kazembe, for speaking about some of those key things that LDC governments need to do in terms of simplifying the approval processes. And you talked about identifying, some of the areas for investment. That will be key, of course, as we continue to look at what is next. I would like us to now hear from Mr. Leonard Stiegler, who's a member of the board of the Swiss African Business Circle, but is also a man who has built businesses in Africa, built companies in Nigeria and across the continent, founder of Pulse, an innovative media house that has platforms in Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, and Senegal. Mr. Stiegler, perhaps you could pick up from where Madam Kazembe has left off. We're speaking about the ways to improve the capacity of LDC governments to promote and facilitate investment. She's touched on a number of those. But you could also talk about the potential that you see in startup technology for businesses for the benefit of the LDCs in which they operate. Mr. Stiegler?
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Dear Secretary General, Ms. Greenspan, Excellencies, fellow panelists, let me first of all say I'm reaching you today from Lagos, Nigeria. And I feel like sitting here almost in a room with all of you. So I think this makes me happy about how small the world has become in recent times in some ways. So I think that's a positive thing. To speak to what you said, Yvonne, first of all, let me give you maybe a bit of a background to me and what we do. So first of all, as you said, Yvonne, I'm the founder and publisher of Pulse, which is a Swiss headquartered but Pan-African operating digital media company. And I'm also board member of the Swiss African Business Circle. The Swiss African Business Circle is an association of 90 member companies that are active in African countries and representing a range of different sectors and business sizes. Now, this Swiss African Business Circle provides a platform for exchange between companies, which is one of the aspects I believe is very important for businesses, doing their and running their services in Africa and LDCs, is to have information, to have exchange, and to have information. So that's why I appreciate this exchange with all of you, the Excellencies, and all of the fellow panelists today as well. Let me quickly touch on the role of Switzerland in LDCs. So one thing is Switzerland has featured in the top 10 list of investors in African countries in the last years. But at the same time, Swiss investment is still focused in only a few key African, or mostly in a few key African markets. And I think here, specifically, what I spoke about in terms of data, in terms of knowledge about macroeconomic developments, and just openness by governments to share information about how to invest in their countries would be one thing that's very helpful for investors such as us and other Swiss investors investing in Africa. With regards to what else would impact FDI flows, how we see it, I think first of all, definitely the ease of doing business. So this is economic framework conditions to be in place. Then I believe market intelligence to really be able to build a business case. And then I believe an access to a network covering both public and private sector in the markets is something that's very important for investors such as us. To speak a bit about more about what we do as an example of how private sector players, investors can make an impact in LDCs also with regards to the SDGs. Let me give the example of our company. So our company Pulse has established a digital media platform on which our local employees across many countries in Africa, including Senegal, including Ghana, including Nigeria, inform and engage their fellow citizens, as well as support local and international companies with their online marketing, with the expertise that we get from our own digital publications. Early next year, we will also be launching the Pulse platform in Uganda and Cote d'Ivoire. Now, many of the jobs that we are creating on the continent, from digital marketing to social media video, did not even exist in the markets before. So these jobs do not only support the users and businesses that we are serving as a business, but they're also serving to teach new skills to young people on the continent. And vice versa, we as a company benefit from a lot of the creative, smart people we can work with in the LDCs in Africa and beyond. So we are very eager to explore new opportunities on the continent here in Africa as an investor with that, a great benefit in mind. We believe the potential of the young, bright population in Africa is a key reason to invest on the continent, specifically when it comes to new technologies, because in Africa, actually, a lot of young people have grown up with modern technology, with mobile internet. So building on that natural affinity, often yielding actually world-leading innovation is one of the key reasons why we say Africa is very much a investment destination for us and a growing investment destination for us. Let me touch finally on the point you mentioned, Yvonne, regarding the potential of LDCs when it comes to investment, and in our case specifically investment in the digital sector in some LDCs and other countries in Africa. So overall, we see a huge potential for rapid advancement and leapfrogging in digitalization by unlocking global opportunities for the LDCs via this digitalization. Let me explain what I mean by this. What we have seen is the first phase of digitalization in developing countries over the last 10, 15 years has led to many hundreds of millions of people coming online to be able to communicate with each other and be better informed. This is something, for example, we support with our Pan-African company Pulse. Now, in more recent years, the buildup of the digital payment infrastructure has led to commerce, online services, online banking services, online credit and saving services also coming online, having an effect of having an inclusive effect, an inclusion effect for many, many more citizens as well. This leapfrogging of, so to say, the physical infrastructure that wasn't always built up in developing countries has led to citizens now being able to access services more seamlessly and also to tap into a global supply chain when it comes to e-commerce, when it comes to SME supplies that were mentioned before, as well as global innovation. Now, what we believe, and I think what's truly fascinating, is actually the big trend of developing countries and citizens in developing countries, including the LDCs, to be able to go global digitally. What do I mean by this? And this is really much in the very recent years. It means young talents in countries in the developing world and being able to work from their home country for global technology companies, or being able to actually build globally relevant technology companies out of the country that they are in, with also more and more interest by international investors to actually invest not only in the US, not only in Europe, not only in China, but also in other countries and regions around the world, because they are seeing there is a lot of potential, human potential, and a lot of great talent, a lot of great companies that are also being built out of these countries that are now being able to tap onto on a global market, into a global market through the power of seamless digitalization. This leads, of course, to more local jobs in the sector, more problem solving, as well as innovation. Now, I would like to end with the point of saying, we see if this power of this trend is utilized right by the LDCs and embraced by the governments in the LDCs as truly the potential for a great leapfrogging, for great innovation, for great job creation, which is obviously very important for the young generation, which we on a micro level also work with our media company across Africa.
Mr. Stiegler, thank you very much for that. And I would like to thank both yourself and Ms. Madalitso Kazembe, who's the chair of the SADC Business Council, speaking about the same things, removing the bottlenecks and simplifying the approval processes that exist. And it looks like you're in tandem with what we heard from the ministers as well. I believe it was the vice minister from Timor-Leste who talked about investing in the people as well. We've also had the digitalization of services and, just taking advantage of this window of opportunity. And as Ms. Kazembe said, important to reduce dependability on one aspect, one sector, one product of export. And these are some of the lessons we're learning from the pandemic and seeing how we can move that forward. And it's so great to hear about your experiences in the private sector and also to hear about what the ministers are doing in terms of addressing some of the concerns that have been raised so that, we can work together. And that is the whole purpose of this roundtable. And we look forward to seeing greater cooperation between the two. So hearing from the ministers, hearing from the private sectors, what about the other very key arm that is involved, in moving us forward towards sustainable development? And I'm talking about the international organizations. I would like us to now get some presentation and intervention now from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. I now invite Dr. Vera Songwe, who's the Executive Secretary of UNECA. Madam Songwe.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you see me? Yes, you can. Thank you. Thanks, Yvonne. Thank you for this very interesting and exciting conversation. At the Economic Commission for Africa, indeed, we are doing a number of things to see how we can ensure, one, that the private sector, but all of us are collectively ministers, organizations are part of this recovery. Let me start, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, of course, captains of industry, and dear friend and colleague, Ms. Greenspan. It is with interest and commitment that I accepted to join this conversation today on the role of FDI in economic recovery. We have seen, of course, that the crisis has led to a sort of what I call dynamic divergence, a difference in response, both from the developed world and of the developing world. The developed world, of course, gave itself 20% of GDP, almost $20 trillion, to recover from the crisis. We've seen that vaccines, particularly in the developing world, are still on the average of less than 10%, in Africa, in particularly about 7%. Whereas in the developed world, we're talking about boosters. Most countries have at least 2 people vaccinated at 60%. And as we go into COP26, we have also seen the huge divergence between those who can respond to the climate crisis, those who cause the climate crisis, and those who are being victims of it. On the continent, many countries now are spending anywhere between 5 to 11% of their GDP responding to the climate crisis. Again, whereas Africa in particular is one of the largest stores of carbon in the world, and emits less than 10% of the global carbon less than 2% of the global carbon emissions. So it is in this context that we're having this conversation on the recovery, is to say we have a much steeper road to climb as low developing countries, as emerging market economies. And therefore, first of all, collaborative South-South exchanges, which this forum is doing today, are particularly important. Listening to the minister from Timor, listening to the captain of industry from Nigeria. What can we do better together? How can we ensure that we work together to collectively recover from what has been a global crisis of the commons? I think three things that we are doing at the Economic Commission for Africa and have been mentioned already on this platform. One of them is continuing to improve the business environment, despite the fact that there is a crisis indeed, despite the fact that we have seen supply chains shut down, in spite of the fact that in many of the Western countries, exports were contracted or even closed to the developing countries. What we've tried to do with the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is, of course, to see how one can support intracontinental trade. The idea of intercontinental trade, of course, is not to shut the rest of the world out, but it is, on the contrary, to see how Africa can begin to create more jobs on the continent, use the labor that it has on the continent to add more value to the products it produces, so that when we finally export, we are actually claiming more value added. If we take a very simple example of the pharmaceutical sector, the vaccine sector, prior to the pandemic, Africa was importing over 95% of all of its pharmaceutical commodities. This essentially was about $14 billion, about 6 million jobs we were exporting. Africa needs to create 13 million jobs before the crisis, 13 million jobs. We're now estimating anywhere in the order of 16 million jobs post-crisis to be able to really recover in a sustainable way. And so essentially being able to pull back some of that import substitution and create more jobs on the continent, I think is going to be one thing that we are looking to do. Of course, we can't do that without foreign direct investment, without some technology coming from abroad to attract that kind of foreign direct investment, to attract that kind of technology exchange. Again, we need an appropriate, consistent, stable, and predictable business environment. And I think that's what we, again, as the Economic Commission for Africa, are doing. The previous speaker spoke about internet, industry, technology. Again, at the Economic Commission for Africa, we've just launched an artificial intelligence center in Congo-Brazzaville, essentially to see how we can work on logistics. How can we facilitate logistics on the continent? How can we simulate, sicknesses and pandemics? We need data, but a lot of this data needs to be analyzed and put out so policymakers can use it in a way that makes sense, so that business can analyze and use it in a way that makes sense. AI developers across the world today are one of the sort of forefront of prosperity. We need the continent to have this kinds of young, intelligent engineers who can do that for us. So we're creating this artificial intelligence center in Congo-Brazzaville with the support, of course, of the government, whom we thank, to see whether we can do that in a way that is sustainable. Next week, we will be launching a cybersecurity initiative in Togo with the head of state, again, to see how we can begin to coalesce around innovation and technology as a way of creating jobs, as a way of crowding in more foreign direct investment on the continent. In the cybersecurity space, we believe that they're going to need at least 100,000 jobs on the continent a year. If we can do something like that, that again creates jobs, where all we're doing is trying to get to a prosperous Africa. So all of these things must come together in a way that gets to a prosperous Africa. I talked about climate, huge issues around climate, but again, working to say, how can we, yes, get to net zero by 2050, but as a continent, use, transition fuels to ensure that we can propel our development much faster? How can we use nature-based solutions to both protect the continent, protect the climate, protect the globe, but at the same time develop, at the same time grow, reduce our use of carbon emissions, reduce our production of carbon emissions, maybe by doing our agriculture differently, our farming differently, our livestock herding differently. So we're also working within the Sahel region to see how we can support some of that work and ensure that, one, again, working with the Australias of the world, the Polands of the world, to see how we can improve on technologies that improve our agricultural production. FDI is needed. And finally, in closing, yes, we're all talking about the fourth industrial revolution, climate change and batteries. We're about to have a very big conference in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has 70% of the world's cobalt, to see whether we can actually have a full supply chain. Today, the Democratic Republic of Congo only benefits from 1% of the cobalt value chain. Can they move to benefiting from 50% of the cobalt value chain, taking them from 11 billion to 241 billion market size in which they can play in? By producing batteries, we're working with, of course, the Germans, Bosch, we're working with the Polish, we're working with South Africans as well, to see whether we can bring together an intra-African business consortium that will help produce batteries in DRC and then export them to the rest of the world so that we can create jobs, but also be part of the fourth industrial revolution. So I think with all this, there is a lot of positives. There's a way out towards the recovery. We need financing. The special drawing rights that have been released to the rest of the world are good. Africa got $33.6 billion. We need a lot more. So the argument now is, can we on-lend some of the rest of the SDRs so that we can essentially help support business, ensure that they have the capital that is needed to do all this wonderful and new innovations that the continent is looking at. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Songwe. And just to reiterate quite a bit of what you've said about South collaboration, about the possibilities and the opportunities that are presented by the AFCTA. And it just ties into a session that we had on Wednesday talking about the internationalization of SMEs. And what came out from the panelists was not just about the countries getting into the global value chain, but perhaps also being a focal part of that value chain, and also about creating new value chains. And we're hearing a lot of that from your presentation just now. And also, I'm sure it's great news to Leonard Stiegler and many of the others panelists here about cybersecurity and investments in an AI center, all of these towards helping the process of digitalization, which has been identified as a great window to leapfrog us as we look towards sustainable development. Thank you very much, Dr. Songwe. We look forward to all of these initiatives that you have talked about, including the availability of data, which is super important to help policymakers and investors in making decisions as to where they're going to put in their investments. Thanks very much for that. Now, I would like to introduce our last panelist for this session. Last but certainly not least, thank you so much for your patience. And we now look forward to your intervention, sir. Allow me to introduce Mr. Ratnakar Adhikari, who's the Executive Director of the World Trade Organization's Enhanced Integrated Framework. Mr. Adhikari.
Thank you, Yvonne. Excellency Ministers, Secretary General of UNCTAD, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, distinguished panelists and participants. It's a great pleasure to join Her Excellency, Ms. Rebecca Greenspan, Secretary General of UNCTAD, to announce the launch of the joint EIF and interagency pilot project in capacity building of investment promotion agencies. The project is a collaborative effort of UNCTAD, UNIDO, ILO, UNOHRRLS, EIF, and YPAR to respond to the call under the SDG 17.5 to support the LDCs adopt investment regimes and strengthen their investment promotion capacity towards achieving SDG targets. The project aims to assist and improve institutional capacity of 20 LDCs to attract investment that contributes to sustainable development, particularly in the SDGs and COVID-19 related sector, to contribute to their economic recovery. The project is the first phase of the joint interagency plan to support LDCs. We are working with partners for the second phase with a much larger scale to cover potentially all LDCs. The roundtable today has given us useful food for thought for the development of the second phase of the project and to help us mobilize resources and support from development partners, business community, and others for this important initiative. Specific to this roundtable today, I concur with several excellent ideas that have been shared so far by distinguished speakers. I would like to contribute to the discussion by making 2 points. The first one relates to ways to improve the capacity of LDC's government to promote and facilitate investment. The economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic have implied an increased pressure on domestic resources in LDCs, an uncertain international support environment, and a new dynamics of FDI's reallocation. The LDCs should redouble efforts to attract new opportunities of FDI reallocation. Priority actions for the investment promotion agencies, IPAs, could include becoming more adaptive and resilient, increased use of digital tools, something that has already been highlighted adequately. The third one is enhanced networking and capacity building. And the final one is adding value to their service offerings. The interagency project that we've launched today is well positioned to support work in these areas. The second point relates to SDG focused strategies and investment diversification in LDCs. The recovery of investment flows to SDG related sectors, which suffered significantly during the pandemic with double-digit decline across all the sectors, remains fragile. The total number of SDG relevant investment projects in LDCs continue to decline. New greenfield announcement fell by 51% and infrastructure project finance deals by 47%. According to the 2021 UNCTAD LDC report, between 2021 and 2030, LDCs require investment that will translate into a GDP growth of 9% per annum to eradicate extreme poverty. This is a tall order. However, what is even more essential is the strategic focusing of investment for greater impact. Sectors of strategic importance to LDCs include renewable energy, digital transformation, which was adequately highlighted by the Executive Secretary of UN ECA, sustainable tourism, and this was also adequately highlighted, and finally, circular economy. And this is becoming an emerging area with great potential for least developed countries. There appears to be a strong case for promoting investment in emerging areas, which, in addition to constituting a strong business case, will contribute to the much needed economic recovery from COVID-19 pandemic in LDCs, while improving business climate for attracting FDIs to these areas is extremely important. Building capacity of investment promotion agencies on FDI promotion and facilitation would be even more critical. I'm pleased to inform you that the EIF WIPA project, and this is also another intra-agency project, aimed at capacity building of LDCs on investment promotion, a project that is being implemented in 20 countries, 20 LDCs, which was launched in the midst of the pandemic, is already showing encouraging results. We are confident that the project launched today will further bolster the capacity of LDCs. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Ratnakar. I mean, I think we couldn't have ended it in a better way to understand just what is happening, and ending that on such an encouraging note. We look forward to hearing more regarding that. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, ministers, heads of international organizations, business leaders who have been part of this distinguished roundtable, I would like to thank you each for your interventions. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the good work that you continue to do, for identifying the opportunities and also identifying the challenges and the bottlenecks and seeing how to work together towards that. And thank you to all who have viewed our session today. I would just like to recap a few things. So one of the things we have agreed, which is now a truth, I believe, from this World Investment Forum. SMEs remain the backbone of economies, and that is why we must continue to focus on building knowledge around their growth, around their utilization of global value chains, their entry into it, and ensuring that they're a focal part of that, and also building new value chains as well. What has also been evident from the sessions we have had over the last couple of days is that SDG-related projects are the way to go towards building back better. They may have taken the back burner, understandably so, as we try to survive a pandemic, but we are now realizing the importance of having those very central to our policy, our legislation, regulation, and prioritization when it comes to investments. And of course, the roles of governments, IPAs, private sector, international organizations towards ensuring that we're all on the same page, and not to forget the important role of digitalization and the important role of data and knowledge around what is happening. I think that cannot be underscored. And so it was very good news to hear from Ms. Greenspan about the multi-agency organization that will be capacity building for IPAs, particularly in LDCs. And so we look forward to that, and also looking forward greatly to LDC 5, which will be in Doha, Qatar in January 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your insights, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much for this great session. I'm Yvonne Okwara, being your moderator. Goodbye and good luck, everybody. Bye-bye.